So we have a special guest. I will say that we know that this is one of the events where people get to take their children, family members, friends too, and it's not quite the same. We'll do a big one next year, but we still wanted to have a visitor and some special commemorative Easter eggs for all of you from the President and the First Lady.
Is the bunny taking questions?
Not today, but we'll invite the bunny back for a future briefing, as always. But the bunny's wearing a mask, where we use every opportunity.
Is this the same bunny suit that Sean Spicer wore?
It does not look similar, but we'll have to fact check that for you. Different eyelashes. Are we good?
Well, that was the White House press briefing today. I thought I would share that with you. In other news, this was in the Daily Mail today, and I found it very interesting and thought I would share it with you. And it says, the Democratic brand has been tarnished. DNC chair says party needs to battle the damage that has been done to it by movements like defund the police to win over rural voters. So whatever we see sort of in the mainstream news has been like Biden's approval ratings are really high. And if you're just watching the mainstream, it sort of seems like these leftist ideas are winning. But when you actually look at real poll numbers and things like that, it tells you a quite different story. And I think that's been the problem with the Democratic Party for this entire time. They seem to be leaning more and more far left, and the farther left they go, the more they abandon their moderate Democrat voters. And now it's starting to bite them in the butt a little bit. So let's read this story and then look at some other stuff. It says the head of the U.S. Democratic National Committee has admitted the party's brand has suffered damage and argued the Democrats could be more attractive to rural voters with better messaging. I think that we have to do as a party is battle the damage to the Democratic brand. DNC Chair Jamie Harrison, who ran against Senator Lindsey Graham in South Carolina last year, said on the Daily Beast New Abnormal podcast, I experienced it in my own race. Lindsey and his crew of dark money effectively labeled me as somebody who believed in defunding the police, he continued. Okay, so yes, I do think some of it is the defunding the police, but it's also a lot more, and we're going to get into that. And where I think someone like this individual is a little bit wrong, I don't know him personally, so I mean, if I'm wrong on him, correct me. But I do know that with a lot of Democratic leaders, although they weren't necessarily for things like defund the police, they weren't calling out the violence, and that worried a lot of people. It worried a lot of people thinking, okay, do you have the backbone to actually stand up against this? Regular people are watching their communities break out into riots. They're watching businesses burn down, stores being looted and things like that. You have one half of the party or one portion, a significant portion of the party saying defund the police, and Republicans are against that, but even moderate Democrats aren't speaking out against that. You're thinking, are they going to be tough enough to be in office? And I'm seeing these scary things. So it's not only that Republicans are using that, and of course they're using that. It's not only that Republicans are using that to their advantage, but you also have Democratic politicians that aren't standing up and speaking out against a lot of this violence. And I think that is hurting them as well. It's going to go into more and surprising, but not so surprising reasons as to why they think the Democratic brand is being tarnished and damaged. So the same Democratic Party chairman goes on to say it's not even just with Republicans. The Democrat brand with some of the folks who are at the core of the base of our party is not the greatest. He said, so I want to spend a lot of time and energy and effort focusing on why the brand is where it is and what it is and how and what we can do in order to prove it. It is one of several self-assessments levied by Democrats in the wake of the 2020 election, which saw a party retake of the White House and the Senate, even as their majority shrank in the House. Soon after the election, commentator Bill Maher, a self-identified liberal, accused Democrats of hypersensitive woke BS that cost them the ground in the White House. In a year that was so much about making people aware of racism, their share of minority votes went down, he continued. The message to Democrats from so much of the country seems to be, we don't like Trump, but we still can't bring ourselves to vote for you. Bill Maher, he's somebody that I wholly disagree with a lot of what he says, but when he speaks out about woke culture and political correctness, he hits the nail pretty much on the head, I think. Although I think he suffers greatly from Trump derangement syndrome. It then goes on to say, while prominent left-wing party members such as Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez have galvanized the Democratic base, they have also provided fodder for the party's critics who accuse Democrats of swinging too far left. Though Ocasio-Cortez frequently makes headlines, a recent nonpartisan study ranked her as one of the least effective Democrats in Congress. And here is what the problem was. So one of the most popular and most vocal Democrats that is an elected official right now is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And even though she is the most popular and the most vocal, she has just been ranked one of the least effective members of Congress. And it says, study declares AOC one of the least effective members of Congress. This was in Fox News. And it says Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was among the least effective members of the last Congress, according to a new study survey from the nonpartisan Center for Effective Lawmaking, a joint project with Vanderbilt University and University of Virginia. AOC introduced a total of 21 bills that the center defined as substantive, but that is where the story ends. Her legislation received no action in committees, no floor votes, and none ever became a law, according to the center, which takes data from Congress.gov. So again, you have one of the most vocal and popular people, but when she is actually working in Congress, she's one of the least effective. She also goes back and forth a great deal. Listen to this. This was a tweet that was put out by Tim Pool, and he puts back to back. This is AOC during the Trump administration talking about the same facilities. So this is her talking about the same exact facilities during the Trump administration as opposed to under the Biden administration. And keep in mind that these same exact facilities are at a much higher capacity right now. Under Trump, I don't believe they were at capacity. Under Biden, they're like 1,000 plus capacity. It's out of control. So she calls these same exact facilities under Trump, she calls them concentration camps. That was June of 2019. Just a few weeks ago, she called them influx facilities that are licensed by the government. So this is someone that does not stand strong on what they believe. They go back and forth depending on what political party is in control and what political party is most beneficial to them. Does she still have those staunch supporters who will just eat up anything that she says? Yes, she does. But a lot of people who have common sense see what's going on here. If you want even more proof that someone like AOC is bad for the Democratic Party, look at this article that came out in Politico a few days ago. It says, vulnerable Dems fret after getting a shock. AOC's campaign cash. So the midterm campaign's first fundraising deadline approached this week. Several vulnerable House Democrats got an unwelcome surprise in their accounts. $5,000 from Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. The New York Democrat sent the contributions to her colleagues to help keep the House majority ahead of a tough cycle without directly contributing to the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee with which she's publicly clashed. But AOC's largesse and an oversight at the campaign headquarters has instead raised awkward questions among her colleagues as some swing state Democrats fret over whether to return her money before the GOP can turn it into an attack ad. Even if imperiled, House Democrats refund her contributions now. Ocasio-Cortez's name is almost for certain to show up on Federal Election Commission reports when they're due this month, creating a liability for members of her party who have to win re-election in districts where her political brand is poisoned thanks to years of unrelenting Republican attacks. I mean, when you have someone who gets that much media attention, who is at the forefront of your party, and they're calling for things like socialism and raising taxes and the Green New Deal and defund the police and all of that, the average person does not want those things. They just want to be left alone and they want to live their lives. They don't want their taxes raised and they want to take care of their families. That's it. But at this point, it's not even just AOC. Look at what just happened with Atlanta. So you have this voter integrity bill that's been, slandered as a voter suppression bill, even though nothing in this bill suppresses anyone's vote, and all the people who come out against it can't say exactly what in it is bad and why it is bad and why it suppresses people. But you have the MLB AllStar Game that pulled out of Atlanta. You had Biden basically siding with this. You also had the mayor of Atlanta siding with the MLB. She came out and publicly said this, pulling out of Atlanta. Atlanta is a mostly Democrat city. If you look at the voting, Atlanta is overwhelmingly Democrat. They lost because this MLB game isn't going there, or because this All-Star game isn't going there. They lost $190 million of revenue. That is going to affect all of those middle-class workers, all of those businesses who lost money because of this, when the bill had nothing bad in it in the first place. Some of the most controversial things they were talking about that were in this bill are that you need a voter, you need an ID in order to vote. Well, 75% of people, regardless of political affiliation or racial background, are for ID to vote. So again, you have these people that are in office, these Democratic elected officials that are turning their back on their voter base and basically punishing them for things that they have no control over. Americans also disapprove of what is going on the border. Biden and Kamala Harris have still not publicly come out and seriously talked about what they're going to do to fix what is happening on the border. Kamala Harris was put in charge of the border, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but around 13 days ago. She still has no plans to visit the border as far as we know so far. And the last I heard her talk about publicly, when someone asked if she was going to visit the border, even though that kids are being crammed on top of each other, families are being crammed on top of each other, when we're in the middle of this pandemic and we're being told that we possibly might need vaccine passports and things of that nature. And we've also seen kids be injured. Some actually passed away on this journey coming up to the border, which was a completely man-made crisis that didn't need to happen. And when Kamala Harris was asked if she was going to go down and visit, this was her reaction.
Do you plan to visit the border? Not today. But I have before, and I'm sure I will again.
So, yeah, I agree. I think the Democratic Party needs some rebranding, and I don't think the Easter Bunny is going to do it. But let me know what you guys think about everything, and I'll see you later. Bye.